The spotlight sliced through the humid Seville air like a knife, catching the pianist's fingers as they danced across the keys. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a melody that had once been their secret anthem. Sophie Harper's champagne flute slipped from her trembling hand, shattering against the marble floor of the Teatro de la Maestranza with a crystalline crash that echoed louder than the applause it interrupted. In that frozen instant, as heads turned and whispers rippled through the crowd, she saw her. Stella Ruiz, alive, unchanged, pouring her soul into the ivory, oblivious to the ghosts from their past rising like smoke from the debris of Sophie's shattered composure. 10 years. A decade of boardrooms and betrayals, of building an empire from the ashes of a broken heart. And now this fate's cruel encore in a city of sun-baked secrets. Sophie's pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the final trill of the piano, as Stella's eyes finally lifted from the score, scanning the audience with that same unguarded vulnerability Sophie had once kissed away under Manhattan rain. Their gazes collided across the gilded hall, and in Stella's widening brown eyes, Sophie saw it. Recognition, raw and ragged, blooming like a bruise. Sophie's heels clicked against the stone as she wove through the throng of patrons spilling into the lobby, the scent of jasmine and aged wood clinging to her like a fever dream. She hadn't planned this trip to Andalusia, a whim, her assistant had called it, a break from the relentless churn of Harper Ventures, her fintech juggernaut that had turned her from wide-eyed intern to Wall Street whisper at 35. But Seville, with its labyrinthine alleys and flamenco echoes, had pulled at something dormant, a thread unraveling since that rainy night in 2015 when Stella vanished without a word, leaving only a half-read novel on Sophie's nightstand and a voicemail that went straight to silence. The lobby buzzed with post-performance chatter. Elderly couples debating the pianist's interpretation, young influencers snapping selfies against the Moorish arches, but Sophie moved like a specter, her emerald silk scarf trailing like a banner of surrender. There by the grand staircase Stella stood surrounded by admirers, a silver-haired impresario clapping her on the back, a cluster of conservatory students hovering with notebooks. She was radiant, her dark curls escaping their pins, her green gown pooling at her feet like spilled ink. At 35, Stella looked sculpted by time's gentler hand, stronger in the shoulders from years at the bench, laugh lines etching depth into her olive skin. But those eyes, those endless brown pools, still held the girl who'd stolen Sophie's breath in a Greenwich Village coffee shop. Sophie. Stella's voice cut through the din, soft as a prelude laced with disbelief. The admirers parted like curtains, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the space between them. 2 feet, 10 years, a lifetime of what-ifs. "It's me," Sophie whispered, her American accent sharp against the melodic Spanish murmurs around them. She stepped closer, inhaling the faint citrus of Stella's perfume, unchanged. "How? God, Stella. How are you even here?" Stella's hand fluttered to her throat, a pianist's instinctive grace. "I could ask you the same. Sophie Harper, queen of algorithms in Seville? The world's gone sideways." Her smile was tentative, a bridge half built over chasms neither dared name yet. But her eyes, those eyes, betrayed the storm. Flickers of joy, guilt, terror. They slipped away from the crowd, into a shadowed alcove off the lobby where tapestries of faded bullfighters hung like silent witnesses. The air was cooler here, laced with the distant strum of a guitar from some unseen bar. Sophie leaned against the cool stone wall, her tailored blazer suddenly too tight, her heart a wild percussion. "I thought you were dead," Sophie said, the words tumbling out raw, unpolished. "Or worse, happy somewhere without me. That last message. I can't do this anymore." Then nothing. Radio silence for a decade. Stella's face crumpled, just for a second, before she schooled it into composure. The mask of the performer. "It wasn't like that. Or, it was, but not how you think." She glanced toward the lobby, as if expecting interruption. "Sophie, I've played this moment in my head 1,000 times, but never like this. Not with you looking at me like I've risen from the grave." "Because you did," Sophie shot back, her voice cracking. "I searched, Stella. Private investigators, social media deep dives. Even called your abuela in Madrid. She said you'd gone back to the earth. Whatever the hell that meant. I buried you in my mind, built walls around it. And now you're here breathing brilliant, while I'm still picking up the pieces." Stella reached out, her fingers, those elegant, callous fingers, brushing Sophie's wrist. The touch was electric, a spark that ignited memories. Stolen weekends in the Hamptons, whispers in the dark about futures unbound by expectation. I never stopped loving you, Stella murmured, her voice thick with unshed tears. But love wasn't enough. Not then. Sophie's breath hitched. Then tell me now. No more ghosts. They found a quiet cafe tucked into the Barrio Santa Cruz, where wrought iron lanterns cast golden pools on cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of lovers' footsteps. Seville at midnight was alive with secrets, the laughter of late-night tapas crowds, the sizzle of chorizo from open grills, the occasional strum of a guitar weaving through the narrow streets like a lover's sigh. Sophie ordered manzanilla sherry neat. Stella a café con leche, her hands wrapping around the cup as if anchoring herself. It started in fragments, Stella's story spilling out like notes from an improvised sonata. They'd met in 2014, two 25-year-olds crashing against each other in New York's relentless tide. Sophie, fresh from Wharton, interning at a venture firm, all ambition and sharp edges. Stella, a Juilliard prodigy from a sprawling Mexican-American family in Texas, her fingers already earning whispers in smoky jazz clubs. Their worlds collided over a spilled latte in that village cafe. Sophie's dry wit meeting Stella's fire, and ignited into something fierce, unspoken in a city that demanded labels but gave them none. We were invincible, Stella said, her eyes distant, tracing the rim of her cup. You with your spreadsheets and dreams of disrupting finance. Me with my recitals and that crazy idea of touring Europe. We talked about it all, buying a brownstone, adopting a rescue dog named Beethoven, growing old arguing over whose turn it was to load the dishwasher. Sophie smiled faintly, the ache blooming anew. And then, Stella's gaze dropped. My diagnosis? Stage 2 lymphoma. The doctors said it was treatable, but the treatments. God, Sophie, the chemo wrecked me. I lost my hair, my strength, half my damn immune system. And you were on the cusp of that big promotion, the one that would launch Harper Ventures. I saw how it lit you up, that fire in your eyes when you pitched ideas late into the night. You think I would have chosen a job over you? Sophie's voice rose, drawing a glance from the bartender wiping glasses nearby. No, Stella said quickly, leaning forward. But I chose for us. My family, they're old school, Catholic to the bone. My parents were already side-eyeing that phase with the city girl. When I got sick, they swooped in, flew me back to Texas for proper care. Mama prayed novenas, Papa footed the bills. But they made it clear. Straighten up, settle down, or no more support. And I panicked. Sophie's fingers tightened around her glass. So you ghosted me. Left me thinking I'd driven you away with my workaholic bullshit. Tears welled in Stella's eyes, spilling over. I left a note in that book. The Price of Salt. Remember? I wrote that I couldn't drag you into my mess, that you deserved the world unburdened. Then I deleted my accounts, changed my number. I beat the cancer in 18 months, but by then I'd convinced myself you'd moved on. You were Sophie Harper, untouchable. The revelation hung between them, heavy as the humid night air. Sophie reached across the scarred wooden table, lacing her fingers with Stella's. They were softer now, less frantic, but the current was the same, warm, insistent, pulling her under. I didn't move on, Sophie admitted, her voice a whisper against the cafe's murmur. I armored up. Dates that went nowhere, mergers that meant more than mornings after. But every quiet moment it was you. Chopin on rainy Tuesdays, your laugh echoing in empty lofts. Stella squeezed her hand. And me? I hid in music. Moved to Spain 5 years ago. Seville's got this soul, you know? The flamenco pulse, the history in every stone. I teach at the conservatory, play gigs like tonight's. It's good, Sophie. Stable. But empty. They walked then, aimless through the labyrinth of Santa Cruz, where whitewashed walls bloomed with bougainvillea and the Guadalquivir murmured secrets to the bridges. Sophie slipped her arm through Stella's, the gesture natural as breathing, and for the first time in years, the weight on her chest lightened. They talked of trivialities, Sophie's latest app that gamified ethical investing, Stella's quirky students who mangled scales but nailed passion, until the sky paled to dawn, and the city stirred with vendors hawking churros. At Stella's rented piso above a patisserie, they paused on the threshold. The air smelled of vanilla and possibility. Stay, Stella said, not a question. Sophie hesitated, the empire waiting across the Atlantic.
You still mourning?
Morning stretched into afternoon, tangled sheets and shared silences, but not the frantic reclaiming of youth. More a gentle mapping of scars, fingers tracing laugh lines and faded tattoos. Stella's apartment was a pianist's haven. Sheet music cascading from shelves, a baby grand squeezed into the sunlit sala. Windows flung open to the plaza below where children kicked a ball and old men argued over dominoes. Over paella scavenged from a neighbor's potluck, Seville's communal spirit in full swing. They delved deeper. Sophie confessed the paranoia that followed Stella's disappearance. Therapy sessions where she'd rage at shadows, the one-night stand that ended in tears because the woman's eyes weren't brown enough. Stella spoke of her remission parties in Austin, toasts to survival that tasted like ash without Sophie to clink glasses. But why Spain? Sophie asked, spearing a shrimp. Stella's smile was wistful. Europe felt like reinvention. Madrid first for the master's program, then here Andalusia's got that raw edge like jazz but with castanets. And distance. From family expectations, from the girl I left behind. Sophie set down her fork. That girl built a fortune on what ifs. Harper Ventures? It's half philanthropy now, funds for queer artists, women in STEM. Your ghost funded it all. Stella's eyes softened. I'd play for that. Hell, I'd compose it. As evening fell, they wandered to the Alcazar Gardens, where orange trees heavy with fruit whispered against fountains. Sophie bought them gelato, pistachio for her, stracciatella for Stella, and they sat on a bench etched with lovers' initials, watching peacocks strut in jewel tones. This feels like cheating fate, Sophie murmured, licking her cone, the green dripping like envy. Stella leaned her head on Sophie's shoulder. Or catching up. 10 years stolen. Let's not waste the encore. But fate, Sophie knew, was a jealous composer, always inserting discords. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Emails from the Madrid office about a potential acquisition, her assistant's texts about flight changes. Reality intruded like a sour note. The next day, over cortados at a corner bar, Sophie broached it. I have to go back. Board meeting Thursday, can't bail on the sharks. Stella nodded, stirring sugar into oblivion. I know. But come for Semana Santa? The processions, the music. It'd be magic. Sophie promised, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of coffee and commitment. They parted at the train station, Sophie's suitcase heavier with borrowed sheet music, Stella's wave lingering like a fermata. Back in New York, the penthouse overlooking the Hudson felt sterile, chrome and glass echoes of solitude. Sophie dove into work, channeling the Seville glow into pitches. Imagine funding that turns notes into equity for underrepresented musicians. Her team buzzed. Investors nodded. But nights were hollow, Chopin's Nocturne on loop, Stella's texts lighting her screen like beacons. Miss your sarcasm already. Recital next month, fly out? She did twice. Once for a flamenco fusion concert where Stella's piano wove with guitars like old lovers reuniting. Again for a rainy weekend in Granada, Alhambra's shadows their backdrop for confessions. I wrote a piece for you, Stella said one night, her fingers coaxing melodies from the keys, haunting, hopeful, laced with minor keys that resolved to major. Sophie fell harder, the walls crumbling. Marry me, she blurted during a siesta in Cordoba's patios, roses climbing the walls like veins. Not legally, Spain's progressive, but us? Let's make it ours. Stella's laughter bubbled, then stilled. Sophie, there's something I haven't said. The air thickened, jasmine turning cloying. Stella sat up, pulling the sheet around her like armor. After the cancer, things changed. My family, they pushed and I tried. For peace. Dated a man briefly. Carlos. He's a violinist, teaches at the conservatory here. Sophie's world tilted. Dated? As in. A year maybe. It was safe, expected. But it ended amicably. He's married now to someone else. But the whispers. My parents still hope. And I let them think it stuck to keep the peace. Betrayal coiled in Sophie's gut. Cold as the Atlantic crossing. You rebuilt without me then? Audition normalcy like it was a role. No. Stella's voice cracked. It was survival. You were a dream too big for my wreckage. But you, God, Sophie, you're the only one who's ever fit. Sophie stood, dressing with mechanical precision. I get it. 10 years is a chasm. But lies? That's the discord I can't play through. She left that night, the patio's roses mocking her flight. In Seville's airport, rain lashed the windows, mirroring the storm inside. Texts went unanswered, calls to voicemail. Back in Manhattan, Sophie armored up again. Yoga at dawn, mergers by noon, philanthropy galas where she smiled like shrapnel. Months blurred. Spring to summer, Semana Santa's floats parading without her. Stella's messages tapered. I'm sorry. I love you still. Until silence, a familiar tomb. Then autumn's chill. An email from Stella's agent, forwarded by a mutual contact. Guest artist at Carnegie Hall. Nocturne cycle. Would love your thoughts. Fate's hook baited anew. Sophie stared at the screen, the city lights fracturing like her resolve. Carnegie, New York, their city. To go was to confront, to ignore, to bury alive. She went. The hall's acoustics swallowed Sophie's footsteps as she slipped into a back row seat, the program's glossy pages trembling in her lap. Carnegie Hall, with its vaulted ceilings and ghosts of virtuosos past, felt like a confessional tonight, intimate, unforgiving. The audience hushed as the lights dimmed, a sea of black ties and sequins, but Sophie's eyes fixed on the stage. Empty save for the Steinway, its lid propped like an open diary. Stella entered from stage left. Not in Seville's emerald flow but a simple black sheath that hugged her frame, her curls pinned in a loose chignon. At 35, she moved with the assurance of someone who'd wrestled angels and won, grace tempered by grit. Applause rippled. She bowed, then settled at the bench, her hands poising like birds about to flee. The first notes cascaded, Chopin's Op. 9 No. 2, the one they'd swayed to in Sophie's tiny walk-up, wine glasses clinking as makeshift maracas. Stella's eyes closed, body swaying, and Sophie was transported. Back to that village cafe, latte foam on Stella's upper lip, their first tentative brush of hands under the table. The music swelled, minor strains twisting into resolve, and tears pricked Sophie's eyes, unbidden, unwelcome. Intermission came too soon, the crowd milling toward the lounges. Sophie stayed rooted, pulse sinking to the lingering echoes. As the house lights rose for the second half, she stood, weaving toward the wings. A stagehand eyed her, patrons only, but she flashed her donor plaque, the perks of Harper Ventures cultural endowments. Backstage was a warren of cables and vanity mirrors, the air thick with rosin and nerves. Stella emerged from her dressing room, wiping sweat from her brow with a towel, her face flushed with post-performance glow. Their eyes met in the mirror's reflection first. Sophie's green fire meeting Stella's brown depths, and time stuttered. You came, Stella breathed, turning slowly. No makeup smudges, just the raw honesty of exertion. A smudge of lipstick on her collar, a stray curl defiant. Sophie crossed her arms, the wool of her coat a barrier. Carnegie? Your nocturnes? I'd have to be dead not to. A tentative smile tugged at Stella's lips. Fair. Want a drink? There's decent scotch in the green room, director's stash. They claimed a corner couch amid the chatter of oboists and techs, the scotch burning smooth down Sophie's throat. Stella poured generously, her pianist's hand steady despite the tremor in her voice. I owe you the full truth, Stella started, staring into her glass as if it held sheet music for amends. After Granada I spiraled, called my therapist in Madrid. Yeah, I finally got one. She said I was punishing myself for surviving, for daring to want more than good enough. Carlos. That was the pinnacle of settling. Safe harbor but no waves. With you. It's a riptide. Sophie's laugh was bitter, edged with relief. A riptide? Try a hurricane. I flew back, threw myself into work, acquired a blockchain startup just to feel in control. But every pitch, every handshake, I saw your hands on the keys, accusing me of running. Stella set her glass down, leaning forward. You didn't run. I did twice. First from the illness, then from the mess I made. But this tour? It's my manifesto. Nocturnes for the loves we lose, the ones we reclaim. The vulnerability cracked something in Sophie. A dam breached. Then reclaim it. No more half measures. I'm tired of empires built on echoes. Stella's hand found hers, tentative then firm. Come to Seville for Christmas? My family's flying in, full disclosure there. Evolving. Mama-s baking tamales. Papi-s grumbling about that gringa influence. But they'd love you. The real you. Sophie searched her face, the lines of history etched there. And us? In their eyes, in the world's. We write our own score, Stella said, fierce. Adagio for the doubts, allegro for the rest. The final notes of the recital encore, an improvised riff on their old anthem, still hummed in Sophie's ears as she boarded the red-eye to Seville. Jet lag clung like fog, but anticipation burned brighter. Christmas in Andalusia. Markets aglow with fairy lights, the scent of roasted chestnuts mingling with incense from midnight mass. Stella met her at the airport, bundled in a wool poncho, her kiss salty with relief. The piso had transformed. A menorah, Stella's nod to her immigrant grey-tans Hanukkah traditions, beside a nacimientos crèche, piñata dangling from the beam. Cultural mashup, Stella grinned, hanging Sophie's coat. Like us. The Ruiz clan arrived en masse, tios and ties from Texas, cousins with accents thicker than gazpacho. Mama Ruiz, silver-streaked and sharp-eyed, enveloped Sophie in a hug that smelled of cinnamon and suspicion. So you're the one who steals my Stella's sleep, she teased, but her grip lingered, appraising. Papa, a retired mechanic with hands like weathered oak, clapped Sophie on the back. Heard you build things from nothing. Respect. Passed the jamon. Dinner was chaos. Laughter over cochinillo crackling in the oven, debates on football versus baseball, Stella's fingers drumming rhythms on the tablecloth. Sophie fielded questions, Wharton's cutthroat. New York's pace. With her trademark candor earning nods. When Mama pulled her aside later, pressing a rosary into her palm, it was with a whisper. She glows around you. Don't break her light. Sophie swallowed hard. Never. Nights were theirs. Rooftop under stars, Stella's piano carrying carols into the crisp air. They danced in the sala to vinyl Nat King Cole. Sophie's head on Stella's shoulder, whispering futures. A home in the Berkshires, summers in Seville. A foundation blending fintech with arts grants. But discord lurked. New Year's Eve amid fireworks over the Giralda, Stella's phone lit with a call from Texas. Her cousin Elena, voice frantic. Tia Rosa's sick pancreatic. Bad. Families gathering. Stella's face drained of color. How long? Weeks, maybe. Come home. The flight to Austin was somber, Sophie at her side like a sentinel. The Ruiz homestead sprawled under live oaks, strung with luminarias, paper bags glowing against grief. Tia Rosa lay frail in the guest room, her once robust frame shrunken, but her eyes sharp as she clasped Stella's hand. And who's this? She rasped, nodding at Sophie. Stella knelt. Sophie. The one. Rosa's gaze flicked between them, lifetime's wisdom in the crinkle. Ah. The ghost stories. Treat her right, Mija. Love's not a solo, it's a duet. Sophie sat vigil too, reading aloud from Rosa's dog-eared Garcia Marquez, her Spanish halting but heartfelt. In quiet moments she'd catch Stella watching, gratitude mingling with fear. The funeral was a tapestry of cultures. Mariachi horns blending with gospel choir, wreaths of marigolds beside lilies. Afterward, in the cemetery's shade, Papa pulled Stella aside. Your mother's worried. This path. With Sophie. The church, the neighbors. Papa, Stella cut in, voice steel. Rosa lived unapologetically. Taught me that. Sophie's my truth. If that's too much. He sighed, deflating. It's not. Just be happy. For all of us. Back in Seville, spring unfurled like a resolution. Azahar blossoms perfuming the air, Semana Santa's pasos shouldering through streets in solemn parade. Sophie extended her stay. Remote closing deals from the Piso's cafe table, her team dubbing it Harper's Andalusian Annex. One twilight during the Feria de Abril, Seville's riot of polka dots and sevillanas, Stella led her to the fairgrounds, alive with casetas thumping with rhythms. Close your eyes, she said, blindfolding Sophie with her manton shawl. The world spun. Laughter, castanets clicking, then silence broken by piano notes. Faint, familiar. Sophie peeled the fabric away. Stella at a makeshift upright amid the revelry, her fingers summoning their nocturne, adapted with flamenco fire. The crowd hushed, swaying. Sophie joined her on the bench, not playing, just resting her hand atop Stella's, guiding the cadence. In that moment, under paper lanterns in star-pricked sky, Sophie felt it. Fate not as confrontation but chorus. 10 years lost, but the music endured. Yet shadows lingered. A letter arrived from Sophie's board. Relocate to London? Expansion demands. The offer gleamed, global reach, legacy etched in stone. But London meant distance, visas, the old churn of ambition over anchor. She showed it to Stella over Rebugitos in a casetta, the sherry's bite mirroring her doubt. It's everything I've chased. But you. Us. Stella's eyes darkened. Not with jealousy but understanding. Go if it sings to you. I'll tour Berlin, Tokyo. We've bridged oceans before. Sophie crumpled the paper. No. The Empire can wait. You can't. Summer deepened their duet. Bike rides along the river. Picnics in Dinana's dunes where wild horses galloped like freedom. Sophie learned scales on Stella's upright, her fingers clumsy but earnest. Stella debugged Sophie's app prototypes, her logic as precise as arpeggios. One August eve as cicadas chorused, Sophie knelt in the sala, a simple band of platinum, engraved with a treble clef in her palm. Not vows, not yet. But a promise, to play this life together, discords and all. Tears traced Stella's cheeks as she slipped it on. Yes. 1,000 encores. Fate, it seemed, had composed a coda of grace. Not thunderous triumph but quiet harmony. In Seville's embrace, two women once sundered by storms found their rhythm. A lesbian love story etched not in headlines, but in the spaces between notes, resilient, human, eternal. Autumn winds whispered through the orange groves as Sophie and Stella settled into a new rhythm. Their lives a counterpoint of continents and commitments. Sophie had deferred the London posting indefinitely, much to her board's grumbling. Harper's gone soft on sangria. And instead funneled Harper Ventures resources into a Seville satellite office. It was a hybrid beast. Fintech meetups in co-working spaces by day, evenings dissolving into Stella's conservatory recitals where Sophie's logo subtly sponsored the programs. Queer coders and composers, Sophie joked over tapas. The ultimate disruption. Stella's tour schedule eased too. She cherry-picked gigs closer to home. Barcelona's Palau de la Música, Lisbon's sun-drenched halls, leaving weekends for them. Their piso expanded. A second bedroom converted to Sophie's home office, walls papered with sheet music collages and Polaroids from Granada getaways. Mornings began with café con leche on the balcony, Sophie's laptop humming beside Stella's sketchpad of melody fragments. But harmony breeds its own tensions. Stella's family visits grew frequent, Mama's care packages arriving bi-weekly, empanadas frozen in Tupperware, notes in spidery script. Don't forget Mass, even if it's the progressive one. Papa's calls turned avuncular, peppered with stock tips cribbed from Sophie's podcasts, but undertones lingered. When's the wedding? Or, whatever you modern girls do. Stella fielded them with grace, but Sophie saw the wear, shoulders tensing at dinner, smiles strained. It's progress, she'd say, curling into Sophie post-call. But old habits die hard. They love us but on their terms. Sophie, ever the fixer, proposed a compromise. A family summit in the States. The Berkshire's house, fall foliage, no jet lag. We'll host a barbecue, show him our world on neutral turf. Stella's eyes lit. With brisket? You're on. The estate in Massachusetts was Sophie's sanctuary. A shingle-style manse she bought on a whim 5 years prior. Its porches groaning under wisteria, library stacked with first editions. October painted the hills crimson gold. They flew the Ruizes in first class, courtesy of miles accrued from endless transatlantics. The weekend unfolded like a well-rehearsed quartet. Mornings, Papa and Sophie bonding over fly fishing in the Concopat River. His gruff laughter echoing as she outcast him. Mira, the gringa hooks him better. Afternoons, Mama and Stella in the kitchen, tamales steaming beside Sophie's attempted pecan pie, flour-dusted hugs dissolving old reservations. Evenings sealed it. Bonfire crackling, guitars strumming Tex-Mex ballads, Sophie and Stella stealing glances across the flames. When Papa raised a glass, to family wherever it finds you, his eyes met Sophie's, a nod of quiet alliance. You're in, he rumbled later, clapping her shoulder as stars wheeled overhead. Keep her laughing. That's the trick. Relief washed over Sophie like the Housatonic's current. Back in Seville, the piso felt fortified. Their love less a fragile solo, more a robust symphony. Winter brought collaborations. Stella composed a suite inspired by their story. Nocturnes for Lost and Found, premiering at the Teatro Real in Madrid. Sophie crowdfunded it via her app, turning streams into scholarships for young queer musicians. The night of the debut, Sophie sat front row, heart swelling as Stella dedicated it. To the woman who taught me fate's not fixed, it's rewritten note by note. Reviews hailed it. Ruiz's opus pulses with raw Americana soul, a bridge across divides. Invites flooded Lincoln Center La Scala. But Stella paused, turning to Sophie over post-show cava. What if we root here? Conservatory 10 years open. You could expand European hub. Sophie waited. New York's siren call versus Andalusia's warmth. Let's vote. But my ballot says yes. Spring 2026 bloomed with decisions. They signed papers on a finca outside Ronda, whitewashed walls, olive groves rolling to cliffs, a grand piano shipped from the Piso. Our duet den, Stella christened it, planting lavender along the drive. Renovations unearthed joys. Weekends hauling terracotta tiles, evenings sketching layouts over vino tinto. Sophie discovered a knack for plastering. Stella, for haggling with contractors in rapid Andalus. One dusty afternoon amid paint-splattered dropcloths, Sophie found a hidden alcove, perfect for a library nook. Books and benches, she mused, envisioning shelves of Audre Lorde beside Lorca. Stella wrapped arms around her from behind. And us curled up with Coco. Domestic bliss, Harper style. But bliss invites tests. A call from Sophie's ex-mentor Victoria Lang, Wall Street's Iron Lady dangled temptation. CEO slot at Apex Capital. Billions on the table. Your legacy, Sophie. The offer gnawed power, prestige, the pinnacle she'd clawed toward since Wharton. Nights she'd pace the half-built patio, Stella watching from the hammock. It's not just money, Sophie confessed one dawn, dew-kissed lemons overhead. It's validation. Proving the girl from nowhere could rule. Stella rose, cupping her face. You already have. To me, to the world. But if it calls, answer. I'll be your interlude. Sophie agonized, spreadsheets mocking her heart. Apex's board wined her in Manhattan. Stakes at Delmonico's, projections gleaming like fool's gold. Victoria leaned in. Don't go soft on us, Harper. Power's lonely, but it's yours. Back in Ronda, the finca's bones stood bare. Exposed beams like ribs waiting for flesh. Stella greeted her with quiet eyes, no pressure. Just a pot of paella simmering. Over dinner under lantern glow, Sophie slid the rejection email across the table. I turned it down, she said, voice steady. Legacy's not a corner office. It's this us building something real. Stella's whoop shattered the silence. They danced on the tile shards, laughter echoing to the stars. Summer sealed their foundation. The finca christened with a housewarming. Conservatory colleagues, Harper execs flown in, Ruiz's via video link. Flamenco dancers stomped the courtyard. Sophie's playlist mixed Billie Holiday with Rosalia. Stella played till midnight, improvising guest stories into riffs, Sophie's ambition a staccato drive, Atia's gossip a playful trill. As embers died, Sophie pulled Stella to the terrace overlooking the gorge, wind carrying pine and possibility. 10 years ago I thought fate stole you, she murmured, bandaged ring glinting. Now? It delivered. Stella kissed her temple. And we'll keep composing. Yet autumn brought an unanticipated movement. Stella's agent rang. A Guggenheim Fellowship, year in residence at Juilliard's Alice Tully Hall. Your suite's a hit. They want the full opus, mentorships included. Elation Ward with Ache. New York, their origin a siren redux. Stella deferred, eyes on Sophie. We could split time. Finca for summers, city for winters. Sophie nodded, masking the twinge. Snowy Central Park walks? I'm in. They sublet the Piso, packing the finca with essentials. Piano crated, laptops synced. The flight to JFK felt like a prelude. Manhattan's skyline a prodigal's welcome. Horns blaring, steam rising from grates. The sublet in Chelsea overlooked the High Line, vines twisting like veins. Stella dove into rehearsals, her days a whirl of protégés and panels. Sophie commuted to the Harper Tower, her office now a transatlantic nerve center. Evenings. Lincoln Center strolls, falafel from their old halal cart. Nights tangled in sheets scented with Hudson fog. But city's pulse quickened old fractures. Stella's fame swelled. Interviews in the New Yorker, panels on queer ladies' voices. Whispers followed, Ruiz's muse. That tech heiress. Papa called proud but probing. Big lights, eh? Don't forget the simple life. Sophie felt it too, the churn. Late nights poring over Pianist, while Stella composed till dawn. One blizzard-bound evening, snow muffling the streets, tension crested. You're fading, Stella said over takeout tie. Her fork paused mid-air. The city's eating you. Sophie bristled. It's work. Our bridge. But at what cost? Stella pressed, gentle. I see you, eyes hollow, scrolling emails at 3 a.m. This fellowship's my dream, but not if it dims yours. Sophie deflated, snowflakes melting on the window. I'm scared of losing the ease, the finca mornings. New York's us at 25, hungry, but not home. They talked till dawn, mapping a modulation. Semester in New York, then Rhonda recharge. Stella pitched a joint project. Keys to Code, workshops blending music and tech for underserved youth. Our signature, she said. Fate's full circle. Winter thawed into resolve. Stella's residency culminated in a gala premiere. Nocturnes expanded, with projections of Seville sunsets and Berkshire's leaves. Sophie emceed the after-party, toasting to stolen years reclaimed, to duets that defy distance. Spring repatriated them to Rhonda, the finca blooming riotous, roses reclaiming arbors, bees droning in lavender. Unpacked crates yielded surprises. A forgotten photo from Seville's first night, their silhouettes against the Giralda. One golden afternoon as they lounged by the pool, Stella sketching, Sophie editing grants. A courier arrived. Acceptance for Keys to Code, seed funding from a queer arts consortium. We're official, Sophie hooped, pulling Stella into the water fully clothed. Laughter bubbled. They surfaced, dripping, foreheads touching.
Fate confronted, Stella murmured.
And conquered. Years folded forward. The program flourished, satellites in Austin and Madrid. Sophie mentored coders with Stella's flair. Stella's compositions scored indie films. Her TED Talk on love's improvisation viral. The Ruizes visited annually, Mama's rosary now joined by a rainbow pin. At 40 they stood on the finca's terrace. Canyon winds tousling silver threads in their hair. Sophie slipped a Vaurenouil band beside the first, rose gold, etched with encore. Not end, she said. Just the bridge to more. Stella's kiss was the answer. Deep, declarative. Below the world turned, rivers carving stone, stars scripting skies. Their story, once a lost chord, now a symphony. Dramatic, tender, defiantly theirs. In the end, fate wasn't a thief or tyrant, but a patient arranger, waiting for two women to seize the baton and play on. The ink on their commitment bands had barely dried when the first real discord struck. Not a petty spat, but a seismic shift disguised as opportunity. It was late summer in Rhonda, the air thick with the hum of cicadas and the tang of ripening figs from the orchard. Sophie had just wrapped a virtual pitch for Keys to Code's expansion. Pilots in Bogota and Cape Town, bridging beats and bites across hemispheres, when her phone lit with an unknown New York number. Harper? Lang here. Victoria. The voice was velvet over steel, unchanged since their mentorship days. Congrats on the fellowship tie-in. Impressive pivot. But I've got something bigger. Advisory role at the UN's Digital Inclusion Initiative. Global stage, Sophie. Policy shaping, billions in play. You'd be the face. Queer trailblazer and fintech for good. Sophie's breath caught, the terrace blurring. The glass ceiling shatter she daydreamed in dorm rooms, fueling all-nighters. Details. Victoria's pitch flowed like champagne. Davos keynotes, summits in Geneva. A corner suite overlooking the East River. 6-month trial renewable. Stella could guessed. Arts integration's hot now. Sophie hung up dazed, the proposal email pinging seconds later. Bullet points gleaming like stars. She found Stella in the studio, fingers flying over the piano. A new movement for their program. Lively, syncopated, evoking global fusion. Listen to this, Stella said, not pausing. Colombian cumbia meets electronica. Perfect for Bogota. Sophie waited out the refrain, then slid the printout across the music stand. Read this. Stella scanned, her playing faltering mid-phrase. Sophie, that's colossal. Pride laced her tone, but undertones quivered. Apprehension, perhaps envy. Right? We'd crush it together. Your music, my metrics, keys on steroids. Stella's fingers still tracing a key. We? Or you? Geneva's not a commute from Rhonda. The word we hung, a fragile fermata. Sophie knelt beside the bench, taking Stella's hands warm, inked with faint blue from recent scores. It'd be rotations. You tour Europe, I shuttle. We've done distance. Stella's brown eyes searched hers, depths roiling. Have we? Last winter wore us thin, late calls, mismatched time zones. I don't want to be the footnote in your opus. You're the whole damn score, Sophie insisted, kissing her knuckles. This elevates us both. But doubt seated. Over the next weeks, Sophie prepped. Mock testimonies, networking Zooms with diplomats. Stella supported, brainstorming session tracks, even demoing a digital nocturne for the pitch. But silences stretched, her laughter a beat off. The offer formalized in September. A black car ride to Madrid for the signing. Sophie emerged exhilarated. Champagne flutes clinking in a rooftop bar overlooking the Retiro. To summits, she toasted, clinking Stella's glass. Stella's smile was genuine but shadowed. To you, conquering. Back at the finca, cracks spiderwebbed. Sophie's days blurred into prep. Flight itineraries to Geneva. Wardrobe fittings for UN briefings. Stella's conservatory semester ramped up. Her classes swelling with ambitious undergrads. Dinners devolved to catch-ups. How was the policy sim? The kid with the atonal fugue. Intimacy ration like rehearsal breaks. One olive harvest evening, as they jarred the season's yield in the kitchen, Stella's abuela's recipe, hands sticky with brine, tension crested. A jar slipped from Sophie's grip, shattering green gold oil across tiles. Damn, she muttered, grabbing a towel. Stella knelt too, shards glinting between them. Like us? Slippery, breaking under pressure. Sophie froze. What's that mean? Stella sat back on her heels, oil staining her jeans. You're leaving, Sophie. Not tomorrow but soon. And I'll be here holding the fort, wondering if Rhonda's just your pit stop. It's 6 months, Sophie countered, voice rising. A trial. For impact, real change, not just apps. But whose change? Stella shot back, tears welling. Mine's here, the students, the finca, the life we built. Yours is jet fuel and spotlights. I supported the UN because it's you, but God, it hurts. Like 2015 all over me, fading while you shine. The comparison stung, dredging ghosts. Sophie stood, pacing the terracotta. That was illness, betrayal. This is partnership. Or am I wrong? Stella rose, bridging the gap. You're not. But partnerships bend, don't break. What if this bends us crooked? They held vigil that night, words weaponized then withdrawn. Apologies murmured in the dark. Dawn brought olive branches. A joint walk through the groves, hands linked, air crisp with dew. We negotiate, Sophie proposed. Cap it at 4 months. Monthly Rhonda check-ins. And you, guest spots in Geneva. Flamenco fintech fusion. Stella's laugh broke the ice. Deal. But if I hate fondue, it's on you. October launched Sophie into the fray. UN corridors humming with accents, briefings on blockchain for refugees. Her voice steady in chambers paneled like old masters. Stella visited first. A weekend in a lakeside chalet, where they skied clumsily, then slow danced to a portable speaker's jazz. See? We adapt, Sophie whispered, nuzzling her neck. But adaptation chafed. December solstice summit in Davos was a whirlwind. Schmoozing oligarchs, panels with Nobel laureates, Victoria's arm linked possessively. Sophie texted Stella mid-gala, "Miss your grounding. Call?" But signal lagged, reply delayed by Stella's recital in Lisbon. The disconnect widened. Sophie's feeds flooded with accolades, Forbes 30 under 40 redux, while Stella's emails carried conservatory woes. A star pupil's breakdown, funding cuts looming. Proud of you, Stella wrote, but hurry home. The finca's lonely without your disasters in the kitchen. Christmas found them in Rhonda, a forced interlude. The tree twinkled with ornaments from global markets. Glass baubles from Geneva, tin stars from Seville stalls. Gifts exchanged. Sophie a custom keyboard for Stella, etched with code snippets. Stella a leather-bound journal for Sophie's policy poems. But under the cheer, fault lines hummed. New Year's toast. To balance, Sophie said, clinking. Stella echoed, eyes distant. To Roots. January's thaw brought crisis. Stella's email pinged during a Brussels layover. Pupil attempted suicide. Blames imposter syndrome. In a world that chews artists. Emrect need you. Sophie rerouted. Landing in Malaga at midnight. Rental car hugging cliffs to Ronda. The finca glowed forlorn. Stella met her at the door hollow-eyed, collapsing into embrace. They talked till birdsong. The girl's note echoing Stella's old fears, the helplessness of mentoring without mending one's own scars. You're my anchor, Stella sobbed. Don't drift too far. Sophie held her resolve hardening. I'm cutting Davos. Full stop. The UN's a chapter, not the book. February's renegotiation was brutal. Victoria's icicle stare in a Zurich cafe. Burnout already? Power waits for no one, Harper. It waits for me, Sophie replied, signing the early exit. On my terms. Back in Ronda, spring's thaw mirrored theirs. Stella's pupils stabilized, crediting their program's safe space. Sophie folded UN insights into keys, launching a mental health module, resonant codes. Summer healed deepest. Finca fiestas with locals, Stella's piano under arbors, Sophie's algorithms funding scholarships. One starlit night as fireflies danced, Stella paused mid-sonata. Remember the hook? She asked, fingers lingering on keys. That shattered flute in Seville? Sophie smiled, joining her on the bench. Our overture. And this. Stella played a tender adagio, weaving their vows into melody. Our forever. Years cascaded. Keys to code globalized, outposts in 10 cities. Stella's symphony commissioned by the Met, Sophie executive producing the Doka score. The Ruizes relocated nearby. Papa tinkering in the orchard, Mama leading tamale workshops. At 50, gray threading their curls, they reflected on the terrace. Canyon eternal, love refined. Fate confronted, Sophie murmured, hand in Stella's.
Conquerd Stella affirmed.
With grace notes. Their tale, a drama of discords resolved, emotions etched in time, whispered that true romance isn't absence's ache, but presence's quiet power. Human, enduring, a life's grand finale.